Coming up today on the show, we're going to talk about the kids. We're going to check in on them, see how the rookie class is doing, but we're going to go beyond that. We're going to talk about youth as a whole, players on rookie contracts. How young is this projected Seahawks roster? How does that stack up against the rest of the division? What does it mean moving forward? What kind of roles are these young guys going to play? And then also some big programming news, some cool new stuff on the horizon that's coming up next. This is Seahawks Forever.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
Do me a favor, if you would, please. Closing in on 11,000 subscriptions, and subs are what drives YouTube channels, and I am a full-time independent content creator. Almost called myself an independent contractor. That's technically true too, but it's not. It's irrelevant. All the ways you can support the show are listed down below, including my new Substack, which will remain free until week 2 of the regular season. If you prefer the written word, and the content there as we get closer to the season will begin to ramp up. And then hop on over to the Patreon and check out those tiers as well. $10 a month gets you everything, which includes all of my content ad-free, as well as something new on the way. Stay tuned. Going to talk about that a little bit later in the show. But hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. That's the best way to support the show and me, and it doesn't cost you a thing except one mouse click. A couple of updates today from practice. Of course, Mike McDonald gave the team yesterday off, took them to Top Golf. The team finally showed off some of their video from that, and as you can expect, some guys hit the ball better than others. Always fun, though. Top Golf is always a good time. Interesting to see how many of the Seahawk players are lefties, because you just don't really know in football. Like in baseball, it's obvious, right? It's part of your identity, but not so much in football. Kenneth Walker out there again today, though. So not the second day in a row, because they had yesterday off, but the second practice in a row going full speed. And I think that might be the first time that's happened during camp, at least from what I saw. And then the team will travel tomorrow to Green Bay. Thursday is the full padded, full contact joint practice against the Packers, and then they will play them on Saturday. So the plan is to play the starters on Thursday. That'll be their last significant action of the year. And then the kids that we're going to talk about today, they're going to play on Saturday, and that'll be the last chance for many of these guys that are on the bubble, and some roster decisions laying in front of the coaches to be had. One interesting fact of note, Jordan Love back at practice on a limited basis with the Packers after having surgery on his non-throwing hand. They're going to limit him. Sounds like he will participate in 7-on-7 stuff on Thursday, but not the full padded practice. That's a bummer. As the final contact test for this team, you would like to face their best with your best. Unfortunately, they won't be facing Jordan Love. They'll be facing Malik Willis, who is now firmly entrenched as their second string quarterback. Oluwatimi back out at practice again as well today, although it sounds like he may be limited still by that back injury. Jalen Sundell is still running with the ones, and I've been saying for a week and a half now, the 5 offensive linemen we see out there as the starters against the Packers on Thursday in the joint practice, I believe will be named probably officially by game time on Saturday as the starting 5 against San Francisco week 1, September 7th. And I think that's going to be Sundell and Anthony Bradford. I don't think there's a whole lot of question remaining there. All right, let's get into this. So I put some things together. And this has been a storyline all offseason, right? A month or so ago, shortly before training camp started, I went back and graded the last 5 drafts from John Schneider as a whole. And what did I give him? B minus? B plus? I don't remember, but he was good. It was a good grade, as it should be. He's been doing a great job stocking this roster with young players, and I'm going to put that into perspective with some numbers here in a moment, just to show you how young this roster is. And it's kind of remarkable. A funny thing is happening out there now. As much as the narrative during preseason is preseason doesn't matter, a lot of people just use that narrative to fit their argument about what they think of a player or a team. And yet, we do make judgments based on the preseason. You have to make some. I've said for a while, like the results don't matter, but they're meaningful. Am I using those words right? You could probably flip those around and make the same point. Live reps always matter. And especially for young players. We get to see what they're capable of doing. We get to see how clean the operation is, right? You can clearly see when you look around the league at these games, some teams struggle in certain position groups. Some teams' key players are struggling. You also see the young players and what they're capable of. Doesn't mean those roles are going to carry over fully into the regular season, right? We saw that with Washington last night. A couple of their young guys went off, had great performances. Does that mean they're going to be stars in the regular season? It's not likely unless they were already or had already worked themselves into key roles. So let's look at the Seahawks rookie class and what I believe their roles are going to be, how set they are on making the roster, and how much they're going to play. I put it together in a little chart here for you because I like to, I like visual aids as much as possible. This is, of course, their 11-man draft class. And as you would expect, as you go top to bottom, you see the roles being bigger and then kind of dwindling as you go down. This hasn't always been the case, though, for the Seahawks. If we went back and dissected each of the last 4 or 5 draft classes, it might not be as linear as this. But it certainly is here from what we've seen all throughout OTAs and now training camp in the preseason. So what I've done is you go left to right here, obviously player, position, school, and then grade. This is just a grade that I have assigned them based on what I've seen so far, and it's mostly on a curve. It's not based on some universal objective grading system that I have because I don't have one of those. This is based on the eye test and what I've been able to see attending almost every practice up until this week, and then what I've seen in the preseason game, certainly in watching tape afterwards, and kind of graded based on what expectations of them were. And expectations are always high. So Forgs, and then I went, just to finish the chart here. Chances, that column is what I believe their chances are of making the roster next Wednesday. And then projected role off to the side there. So Gray Zabel, he's the easiest one. Great one to start with. To give you an example, he's an A because he's been everything we wanted and expected him to be and more. Stepped in from day one of OTAs as the clear starter at left guard. And then when he hits the practice field, played up to that draft status and those expectations, and then has even been better in the games. He is an A. In fact, Daniel Jeremiah today was on, he was on Seattle Sports this week, singing the praises of what he's seeing out of this Clint Kubiak offense so far this preseason, but he was on the Pat McAfee show earlier today and echoed some of those same sentiments and said, to his eye, Gray Zabel's the best rookie in the NFL so far, regardless of position. He's been that good. His projected role, chances of making the roster, 100%. Projected role, clear starter. Nick Emenwari, safety, South Carolina, gave him a B because there does seem to be some question about how complete of a player he is at this point in his career. However, almost gave him a higher grade because he wasn't expected to be a complete player as a rookie. Even Mike McDonald, right after they drafted him, said that the deep half stuff, he's compared to Kyle Hamilton a lot and because of what he can do in the box, which is how they're going to use him. But Hamilton's capable, if you need him to, of going and playing free safety, playing center field. That's not Emenwari's game yet, but Mike McDonald says they'll work him into that. And I can tell you this, I saw some of that in practice. They would throw him out there sometimes as the deep safety when the threes were going against each other or the twos were going against the threes. So they are, just as Mike McDonald promised us, starting to also find opportunities to teach him that safety stuff. But in the meantime, what have we seen? We've seen him covering tight ends, backs, slot receivers, big nickel, playing in the box, also playing off the edge. He's going to rush the quarterback a little bit too. And he's done that well. It's just we haven't seen a lot of reps. They've kept him pretty well, about as well as you can hide a guy while giving him live reps. That's why I gave him a B, just because we haven't really seen his whole game yet, and we don't quite know how they're going to use him. Whereas Gray Zabel, it's obvious as heck. 100% chance to make the roster, obviously. Projected role, I listed him as a rotational starter because he is going to be kind of a package guy. He's not going to be an every down player. Elijah Arroyo, tight end, Miami, gave him a B. Started camp hot, was hot all through OTAs.
I don't know that one.
The production has just kind of slipped a little bit in the last couple of weeks. I don't take anything away from him. He does still have some development ahead of him. I like the effort that I see, learning how to block and getting in front of guys. He certainly has that potential. I think that's going to be a part of his game that he improves quite a bit as we move forward. But right now he's 3rd out of 3 on that tight end depth chart. And so as his projected role, I put key backup, but with a significant role. He's going to be part of the rotation. There's going to be some 13 personnel. He's going to be split out wide as an X sometimes. They're going to use him as a weapon, move him around. Significant role. You could almost call him a rotational starter, like I did with Emin Wari. But for now, key backup, significant role. Jalen Milroe, we know the deal there. Gave him a B. Love the progression. Love everything I'm seeing out of the step he's taken forward. Much more accurate. Still has work to do, but much more accurate in the short to intermediate game. He's going through his reads. His processing seems to be developing. He's still so young, you guys, 22 years old. He has so much ahead of him. Chances of making the roster, obviously, 100%. Projected role, developmental backup, but with a short-term role. We don't know how significant that role is going to be. We don't know if he's going to be a 3rd and short guy. We saw the tush push the other day, although they're trying to come up with a new name for it. I've heard it called Seattle Shove. I kind of like that. We don't know how extensive that role is going to be. Is it going to be Taysom Hill-like? Probably not week 1. Might develop into that. Or is it going to be 1 or 2 times a game, depending on game script and situation? Maybe sometimes it'll be 10 reps a game. Maybe sometimes it will be 0. But there will be a plan for him, and he will be available to do some things in certain situations. Torrey Horton, kind of the fast riser with a bullet in camp. OTAs, he was limited early because of the injury that he had his last year at Colorado State. But ever since then, I said it when I was out there covering practice, makes plays every day. Shows you every day that what you're seeing from him isn't a fluke. It's legitimate. So I gave him an A. I mean, how can you not? He has exceeded expectations and worked his way into a projected role for me of key backup, significant role. But again, similar to Elijah Arroyo, you could call him a rotational starter. If this scheme was different, I would. But they're just not going to play a lot of 3 receiver sets, at least not as much as we have seen in the past from other coordinators. And so, it's JSN, it's Cooper Kupp, and then it's Torrey Horton. That's where he's moved himself into the rotation as a rookie. Still nursing that ankle injury right now. Didn't see any reports about how much he went today. Don't know how much he'll go on Thursday. Probably won't play on Saturday. It wouldn't surprise me if they just bubble wrap him until the regular season because they've seen enough. 100% chance to make the roster. As I said, key backup, significant role. Robbie Oots, 5th rounder, fullback, Alabama. How can you not give him an A? There was expected to be a development curve, a learning curve, switching from tight end to fullback, and some of the intricacies of that position. There were some fans who speculated he might have an uphill battle to make the team, especially when Brady Russell was being tried as a fullback as well, and it was seen as a competition. Oots made it very clear early on that there would be no competition. He was the clear-cut fullback, and I think he's shown enough that he has an opportunity to be a very, very impactful fullback. He obviously gets an A from me for his work so far. 100% chance to make the roster. He's a clear starter with a significant role. Now, the fullback's not going to be out there every play. The fullback in New Orleans last year, Adam Prentice, had about a 24-25% snap share. I think Robbie Utes will have a higher snap share than that because of his versatility. He can play as a tight end, and we've seen them move him around a little bit. That's your first 6 rookies in this class that have no fear of not making the roster, no chance they don't make the 53-man roster, and they're going to play significant roles on game day and help contribute to this team winning or losing in 2025. That's huge. Now, I haven't gone through every single roster in the NFL in every rookie class, but I probably will at some point. I can assure you that there aren't any other teams out there whose first 6 drafted rookies are going to play significant roles. I would highly doubt that. And then your 7th rookie, if he was healthy, he might be in this conversation as well, too. Riley Mills, defensive end, Notre Dame, defensive end / defensive lineman. He's going to play in and out. He is still on the PUP list. They have a plan for him. John Schneider said when he was drafted, they expected him mid-season, even though Riley Mills representatives thought he'd be good to go week 1. He's not. He's doing some work, though, and he's running. He's running without a knee brace, and so he's at that level of his rehabilitation. When he does come back healthy, I've got him as a future starter with a rotational member of that defensive line group when healthy as a rookie. He'll play snaps, I believe, and help contribute to this team. And then I know they're excited about him. And I think moving forward, he's a keystone piece on defense with Byron Murphy and Derek Hall and those other young guys up front. Then we get into some of the guys that are less certain. Mason Richmond, offensive tackle, Iowa. I've been back and forth on him. Right now, I gave him a C because he has. It's not so much that he's struggled at times. He hasn't struggled any more or less than day 3 offensive linemen normally do. It's just that they haven't really defined a role for him yet. Is some of that because he hasn't seized that role? But as camp went along, especially the last week and a half or so, it seems like he's worked his way onto the second team. Now, not everybody on the second team is assured of making the roster. Don't know if they're going to carry 10 offensive linemen. And if they do, they're probably going to carry one more tackle because they've got some, they got to keep Michael Jarrell. They're obviously going to keep Josh Jones. And so, we'll get into the 53-man roster projection on Sunday, okay? But Richmond became a lot more interesting to me when they started playing him at center. I believe I was the first person to report that he was working on snapping the football before practice one day with an assistant coach. And then we started seeing the reps on the field. And then with Oluwatimi out, he was running with the third team at center. Played some in the game at center on Friday. And I saw some stuff in practice that looked really good. Like, he was a tackle only in college for 4 years, one of only 2 players to start all 4 years at left tackle for Kirk Ferentz at Iowa, the other one being Tristan Wirfs, so not bad company to be in. But I liked what I saw at center. He really gets out and moves. He's got that tackle strength. He's a guy that can literally right now, because up until that point in camp, they were playing him at guard and tackle. He can play all 5 spots, similar to Jalen Sundell. And that versatility is really important. If they feel good about him, especially if they want to try to just carry 9 offensive linemen, although I do think it'll be 10, he's a guy that's increased his chances. I've got him at 40% right now. I haven't made a final decision on whether I'm going to put him on my final 53. I'm waiting to see what happens in the joint practices and maybe a little bit in the game on Saturday. Guys are starting to do their final 53-man projection now. I am ignoring all of it. I'm shutting it out. I don't want to be influenced by anyone else's opinions, and so I'm saving that, but I'll do it Sunday once the Green Bay game is done. In fact, I might even do it Saturday night, so watch for that. I've got his projected role as versatile backup at 3 spots. Don't know that he has starter upside. Don't know that yet. But even if he doesn't, there's tremendous value in a guy that can play all 3 spots, or all 5 spots, essentially. And then we go Ricky White, 7th rounder, out of UNLV, the receiver. And here's the thing. I gave him a B- with a 20% chance to make the roster mostly because of his special teams prowess. He was an elite special teams player in college. I've seen enough out of him as a receiver to, I put his projected role as developmental receiver and special teams ace. If the team decides to move on from Marquez Valdez-Scantling at the cut to 53, despite the fact they'd have to eat $3 million in dead cap, he might have an outside shot to make this roster. He's probably a practice squad guy, but I gave him a B-. He has done nothing wrong. He has looked good. It's just that the numbers don't work in his favor there. There's just too many young guys at that receiver position, and I think Tariq Young has made this roster now, and that probably pushes Ricky White off of it. But I like his upside. I really hope he gets through to the practice squad. Bryce Cabledew has been all over the place. Man, he started out the camp really rough. I've seen some really bad reps from him. There was a couple of times in pass rush individual stuff last week where he got obliterated, one by rookie undrafted free agent Anthony Campbell, who's big and long and athletic, but he basically forearm shivered him with one arm and blew him onto his backside. We heard about the athleticism and how much the team liked him because of that. Played tackle at Kansas. They see him as a guard. But he's worked his way onto the second team. He was running at second team left guard last week ahead of Satawa Lamea. That's not nothing. And so I still give him a 10% chance to make this roster. He might be one of those guys, similar last year to Jarrell and Lamea and Sundell, that they just like the upside so much they're worried about losing him to waivers. Maybe they carry him on the roster as the 10th guy just because they want to preserve his future. I've got his projected role as developmental guard. And then Damian Martinez is a guy that you all know how much I loved him through the draft process and well before that, going all the way back to his Oregon State days. From what I saw at the Senior Bowl, his tape is phenomenal. Love the physical running style. Just didn't look like himself against the Raiders. Looked tentative and hesitant. Looked better against the Chiefs. Had a nice day. The pass protection stuff in practice has been much better than you'd expect from a guy that just wasn't asked to do it very much in college. He catches the ball better than a guy that you wouldn't expect. Than you would expect from a guy who wasn't asked to do it very much in college. But the numbers game again at running back, George Holani's clearly ahead of him. He's the 4th guy on this list. He'd be the 5th guy if Kenny McIntosh was healthy. And I think they can only afford to keep 3 running backs on the 53 plus Robbie Utes as a fullback. So I've got him as a 5% roster chance just in case he falls into that bucket of we like his future, we don't want to risk losing him. But I think the hope with him is going to be that he gets through the waivers and he gets to the practice squad. Remember, if you're worried about losing these guys to waivers, the claiming team has to put them on their 53 man. And so, we know how running backs are a dime a dozen, but there might be a team out there that regrets missing out on him in the 7th round, loved the tape, and maybe they had some things happen in camp. They don't like the guys as much that they have. Maybe they have some injury issues. Maybe he does get claimed. But a lot of times when that happens, those guys become available again later too. So it's very, very rare that those fringe guys that aren't ready to play right away get claimed and never, ever hit the market again. But I've got him at 5%. I put his grade as a D just because I was expecting a lot more out of him. Still like him, but that D is relative to the expectations I had for him, even though those might have been a little too lofty. 5% chance to make the roster, developmental running back as his projected role. That, I'm telling you, man, that is an outstanding rookie class. You just don't see that, especially from teams that are expected to contend for playoff spots. You might see that from time to time on a rebuilding team because they have so little on the roster. If they have a good draft, they got to play those guys. How does it stack up now against the rest of the NFC West? I took a quick look at this, and what I did is I used Our Lads depth charts. I like them a little bit better than ESPN. They're very proactive about their connections with teams And they build their depth charts based on what they see and their tape study, but also what they're hearing from other people around the league and specifically with those teams. And so that's how they base their depth chart. So I went by that, and I wanted to look at how many players on their rookie contracts are playing significant roles for teams in the NFC West and how the Seahawks compare to that. And here it is. In green, it's offense. Yellow is defense. And this is how many starters are projected to start that are still on their original rookie contract with the team that drafted them. So I should have flipped this around. Let's go right to left. The Cardinals are projected to have 4 rookies starting on offense, 4 on defense for a total of 8. The 49ers are projected to have 2 rookie starters on offense, 5 on defense for a total of 7. Now, they have like 3 or 4 rookies on their second team that, especially those guys on defense, up front, CJ West, Mykel Williams, guys like that, they're going to rotate in. And so, this isn't an exact science, but technically those guys aren't projected as starters right now. They're behind veterans. The Rams, 3 rookies on offense projected to start, 7 on defense. That shouldn't surprise anybody because we saw how good that young defense was last year. And they've really done a nice job of restocking through the draft over the last 3 years, really, since Aaron Donald retired. And then look at the Seahawks. 8 projected starters on offense are on their rookie contracts. Not rookies, on their rookie deal. 7 starters on defense are on their rookie deal. 15 total. That really dwarfs the rest of the division. Speaks to how bright the future may be. I think it speaks to some other things. I think younger teams tend to have fewer injuries. Not always the case, but generally over time in a large sample size. Younger teams typically tend to be faster. They also can tend to be sloppier, make more mistakes, maybe not be physically developed enough. But in the Seahawks case, this could also signal a little bit of a yellow flag that I know some of you are stressing about already, because quite a few of those players are near the end of their rookie contracts, which means that there are decisions to be made by the organization and money to be paid to key players. That's a bigger conversation for another day. And I think we've talked about this enough. We're at the point now where I think we can safely say there are no big extensions coming. Usually when John Schneider extends a young player near the end of his rookie contract in training camp, it happens right away. The last few years we've seen DK Metcalf, Julian Love. There's a number of other examples. I've talked about this, a month or so ago on the show, that those guys were extended the 27th, 28th of July, which is less than a week after camp opens, or the second week of camp, if you just want to, capsulize it. They're just all the guys that we were kind of wondering heading into this season that were eligible for extensions. Boye Mafe, Kenneth Walker, to name a few, Kobe Bryant. None of those guys have really shown exactly who they are. And neither of them really present a clear enough picture of what they are going to be. So it doesn't make sense for the Seahawks to invest a whole bunch of money, potentially near the top of the market, to lock up a couple of guys that, in my opinion, haven't really reached their potential or shown that they can be relied upon to be day in, day out blue chip players. I'm kind of off of the Boye Mafe train. Does he have an opportunity to take another step? Absolutely. Certainly haven't seen it in camp. Like when you show up and watch the practices, and I got to watch almost every practice up until this week, he doesn't look like a special player. Yeah, he's athletic. He's a good dude. He flashes from time to time. We saw the 7 games in a row with a sack, but he's not a problem. He doesn't cause problems in practice. Jared Ivey has caused more problems in practice and in the preseason games than Boye Mafe. Now, maybe they're holding him back, keeping him under wraps. That might make sense in the preseason games, but not in practices. I just don't see a dominant player, though, there. When you see some of the edge contracts that have been handed out recently to kind of second-tier edge players, George Karlaftis, Gregory Rousseau, guys that aren't stars, guys that aren't blue chippers, they're second. They're like the second best pass rusher on their teams. Getting 4 years, $80 million. I'm not giving that to Boye Mafe. And then the Kenneth Walker thing we've talked about till we're blue in the face, just the injury history, the proliferation of running backs and how available they are, how kind of not easy, but they're every year in the draft you can replenish with young running backs if you want to. There's guys like Jacardier Wright, who's kind of been a revelation in this camp. Smaller school guy, undrafted free agent. He looks like an NFL running back. He's not going to make this roster. There's guys like that out there at the cut to 53. And then all the Seahawks have to do is look in their own running back room to see the depth, the future, the talent. Zach Charbonnet is capable of being a number one running back in this league. I believe George Halani can be a starting NFL running back in this league. Damian Martinez, if he can make the roster, has that kind of upside. I think Kenny McIntosh had that upside, but now second serious knee injury in his first 3 years, that might be in question. And so right there in their own house, they can see their future at running back. Doesn't make a lot of sense when you see what James Cook just signed for. Are you giving Kenneth Walker 4 years and $48 million? I'm not. It's not that I don't like him. I have said on this show that their offensive success might depend as much on him as anyone else. Now, I've changed my view on that because I've seen how varied this offense is going to be and how it's not just going to rely on one guy and how Zach Charbonnet might be a better fit for this offense. Daniel Jeremiah talked about that the last couple of days in a couple of different places. I think that the ceiling is unlimited for Kenneth Walker. I have said he is capable of a Jahmyr Gibbs type season. Can he stay healthy? And will they even give him that opportunity? I think this team is committed to and intent on a timeshare. I think it could look very similar to what it's looked like in Detroit the last couple of years with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. I think, we've talked on the show, Bryce and I just talked about it the other day, the Jonathan Stewart, D'Angelo Williams pairing that was so dynamic in Carolina for those couple of years when Cam Newton was the quarterback there. Different styles, right? One's more of a north and south runner. One's more of a home run hitter. I want to see it work with both of them. I'm fully expecting there's some of this in Kubiak's past to see some 22 personnel or some 21 personnel with Charbonnet and Walker together in the backfield and not Robbie Yates as a fullback. They haven't shown us that because why would you? You don't want us talking about that if that's something you plan to do and you're not going to put that on tape. So I want to see that. I'm just not going to pay for it yet. Now, maybe he goes out and plays 17 games this year and proves to be the best running back in football. In the event that that should happen, then maybe you decide as an organization you should probably keep this guy around. Even then, I'm not sure. And so, those decisions are coming. I don't think any of them are going to happen this year, which is why, save for a big trade, and I do think, there's indications that and some reporting that the Seahawks would have been all in on Micah Parsons if he was truly available. There's new information from Josina Anderson today. She doesn't think it's going to happen. And that maybe they were more lukewarm on Trey Hendrickson. But now that the Bengals have made it known that they've kind of reached the end of their rope with Hendrickson and that he might truly be available, he's obviously available because they're leaking stuff out there, right? We're hearing very similar buzz to what we heard before DK Metcalf was traded, right? That the Seahawks want a first-round pick. Of course they did. And of course they want to let teams know that. And then ultimately you end up settling for a second. Well, Hendrickson's in a different category. He's 31 years old and wants a new big contract. There aren't a whole lot of comps out there of guys getting traded at his age that are as productive as him and as good as him. I think a young player of some kind and a third might ultimately get it done. Obviously, no one's jumping at offering them a first, or we probably would have a deal by now. So I still think there's a possibility something like that might happen. I also still think Jadeveon Clowney is a possibility, although the fact that Uchenna Nwosu sounds like he's closer to coming back and maybe ready week 1, 2, or 3 might kind of mitigate the need for Jadeveon Clowney, although I still think he'd fit as a rotational player if he's open to that. That $32, $33 million in cap space that they have that you all want them to spend just because they have it might be better served to roll over into next year and add to the cap so that you have more flexibility. If they did nothing the rest of the year, no trades at the deadline, no extensions, nothing else, and they rolled that over to next year, they would have between $80 and $90 million in cap space next year. That's quite a bit to work with. And if you start doing the math in your head and you think, well, they have to sign Reek and Witherspoon and maybe Mafe has a huge year and they want to bring him back, and Kobe Bryant, right? And Charles Cross and Abe Lucas, there's not enough to go around. Yeah, there is. Because there's other contracts that can easily be adjusted as well. There's levers they can pull. There's Leo Williams. There's Nwosu. There's other things they can do to free up that money, as they do every single year. They manage their cap very, very well. Top 5, top 6 in cap space right now and next year. That gives you flexibility. That's the only word you need to focus on. Flexibility. They can make anything happen within those parameters. So it's only good news. Better to be young and good than old and good. You know, the late, great John Clayton used to always say this is a talent acquisition league, and having a roster chock full of young talent is one of the best positions you can be in this league, especially if you're already pretty good, which the Seahawks are. Young and good is where you want to be in this league. Young, good, and with future cap flexibility moving forward is the best situation you can be in if your quarterback situation's in good shape. And we can have that discussion another day, but I think top to bottom in their quarterback room, it's kind of layered with some interesting dudes, and I think they're in pretty good shape for the next couple of years. So it's a good spot to be in. Now, I will remind you again, young teams can sometimes drive us crazy. Sometimes they might lose a game that they shouldn't lose. But also, when you get a young team on the same page and they all are pointed in the same direction and the arrow starts pointing up, you can ride that to a championship if you have the right pieces in place. It's fun. It's a lot of fun seeing this roster put together. Now, as I was figuring out those numbers and those projections of starters on rookie contracts, I was doing so within the framework of my 53-man roster projection, which I will do Saturday night or Sunday morning after the Green Bay game is finished. Because it's an afternoon game, I might just plan on doing that Saturday night, maybe even in a live show. Don't hold me to that yet. We'll see what happens. But that might be the most fun way to do it. Kind of unveil it one side of the ball to the next and get all your feedback on it at that time. And then next Wednesday is cut down day. And my plan at this point is to kind of right around the deadline, just be live. We can just hang out live for a couple hours and kind of, as those reports trickle in, start to put that together. Promised you some programming notes. We've told you about the Seahawks Syndicate that's coming up. It'll be the last Wednesday of every month, kind of recapping the month. We're going to do our first one next Wednesday, I believe 5:30. We're going to do those live so you can be a part of it. I'm going to host the first one on my channel, but it's me, Bryce Coots from the Hawk Zone, Brandon Kane from the Hawks Nest, and Mookie Alexander from Field Goals. The four of us. And we'll be hosting the first one on my channel, but it'll be streamed to everyone's channel. You'll be able to watch it wherever you prefer. But also, Bryce Coots and I are doing another new weekly show during the season called Hawks Film Lab. I had to remember the name. We just kind of finalized it and came up with some graphics last night. Hawks Film Lab. We're going to do it on Fridays, beginning this Friday. and we will look back at the previous game and break down some aspect of the game on all 22 tape, leaning into Bryce's expertise as a football coach, offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, runs that quarterback academy up in Vancouver. Really excited about that one. That will only be available to paid YouTube members and Patreon members. So go check out those memberships if you would like to get in on that. The first one of those will hit on Friday night. Tomorrow, join me, Bootleg Football's EJ Snyder. We've had Brett Coleman on the show before. EJ's going to join me tomorrow. We're going to talk mostly about the defense, and we're going to take a little bit of a critical eye look at this defense. Are we taking it for granted? Are we just assuming it's going to be good as is, or is there more to be added there? Do they need a little something more? We're going to analyze the defense and see how it shapes up moving forward with EJ Snyder tomorrow. In the meantime, follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Seahawks Forever. Subscribe to the channel and hit that like button if you would. If you want to be notified of new content, hit that bell button, and all the other ways you can support me as an independent full-time content creator. Listen, link down below in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Dan. This is Seahawks Forever. Forever and always, go Hawks.